Well, we are here, on this episode of Too Many Men on the Mic. We've got an awesome topic. We're lucky to be joined by Dan Jablonic, who is manager of player development for USA Hockey. Dan is this is Dan's second time joining us, as he was with us back in August as we were at the Level 5 Symposium in Columbus, Ohio. And Drew, I think I speak for you as well, and probably a lot of folks out there. We've got a great topic that people are going to be really interested in, and it's an opportunity for for growth amongst not just players and coaches but parents as well. So why don't we go ahead and bring Dan in, and let's get this conversation started. Dan, it is great to see you. I wore my 2022 Nationals hat just in your honor. I think Drew's got a 2024, right? You've got the 2024 hat. So
I do. I've got a 2024.
More recent than me.
A week in Vegas playing hockey.
Nice.
Yeah, we were up in Michigan in 2022. It was a blast. So Thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. And it's appreciate you guys repping the USA Hockey swag as well. And all good stuff. And I love that you got your tagline on there right there, Coach Jared. All good stuff.
Yep.
I think that's what it's all about.
Well, it's funny, Dan, and I think it's good to set the stage for our audience. Dan doesn't just work for USA Hockey. He's been a lifelong hockey player and coach. He's definitely a great resource, and there's some very smart hockey people at USA Hockey who listen to a lot of what Dan has to say. And so we figure that for our audience, you've been a great guest for us in the past, and really we've got a topic that I think can be a little touchy at times. In this day and age with TikTok and social media, there's a lot of negativity that you see on, parent behavior, and not just in youth hockey, in all across youth sports. And there's probably a lot of different triggers to that behavior. But I think that we're going to take a different spin on it today and talk about, not just, hey, this is what a parent should and shouldn't do, but really the importance of it to their players and to their children. Not just in the moment of that game or that season, but really, setting an example for one day when your children become parents of youth sports, whether it's hockey, soccer, or baseball. So, let's just jump in right to it and talk about USA Hockey's stance on this. USA Hockey actually has a parent handbook that is available via download, and it covers a lot of topics. But tell us a little bit about the USA Hockey philosophy, stance, and support for parents, and we'll just let the conversation go from there.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jared. Thank you. First of all, I just want to start off and kind of backtrack a little bit. And you mentioned, my colleagues at USA Hockey. I'm so fortunate. I work with some incredible people, as you know, and they've been guests of yours. But I think when we look at that and developing any team, when you work with some incredible humans like I do, and the leadership that we have from our hockey development department and Bob Mancini and obviously Pat Kelleher and Mike Trimboli as president, it just sets the stage of trying to provide the best possible experience that we can for every kid, and very passionate about this subject right now. And it's perfect timing because, as you mentioned, we have a parent handbook, but I think when we look at that, there's always ways that how can we deliver this even better in the changing landscape? And I think that's important for us. As you know, hockey's changed dramatically in the last couple of years. The players are even more skilled, they're smarter, it's faster on all levels, right? When we look at it, it's not just youth hockey, it's girls hockey, it's sled, it's all the different disciplines that come in that. And so we're looking at, hey, how do we actually look at each player as their own experiment, right? Every player is a development experiment of one, and how do we actually tailor that? Because your path as a coach and as a parent might be different than, say, my family. So how do we actually, and I love that you talked about it, it's not a tell-all, but here's some actually reference points of this is what to look for when you start in as a new parent. As we know, when you go from 6U to 8U, and now all of a sudden you get into a little more of the team dynamic at 10, things change a little bit. We want to make sure we're setting these parents up for, hey, what does good coaching look like in today's landscape? Here's some things that you can look at. Here's some questions you can ask. How can you actually look at, supporting your child? And we'll dive into that, I'm sure, a little bit later, especially You guys have been coaching a long time, and you see that the questions that come up on the car ride home or the car ride to the event. And it's just, what are some best practices that we've learned to really look at it through the lens of that child, so they can develop on their own. And I love one of the topics that we talk about is, at what point does, that transfer of responsibility go from essentially from the parent getting the kid there to the player really taking responsibility. And that's a key point for us as they get older and get into, say, 13, 14. It's the kids preparing themselves for the next stage, and hopefully it's an enjoyment that we always talk about. We all end up in the recreational league at some point. Doesn't matter if you played pro or college, but hopefully we're instilling a passion that these kids absolutely love hockey and sports and all the good things that come with it, right? We'll talk about those life lessons as well. It's absolutely incredible what our sport delivers on a constant basis. I mean, hockey delivers. If I can be a simpleton and say that, it just gives you so much over the course of that journey. So wherever you want to dive in, I'm happy to chat on.
Well, Dan, I think a common instance that players and parents will run into is that car ride home, right? So you've got your son or daughters played a game, they get in the car, and really the analogy I want to use here is moving from being a driver to a passenger. A driver literally, but also a driver figuratively, where maybe the car ride home is not the time to drive the behaviors that you're looking at from your son or daughter, but simply to be a passenger, even though you're literally driving the car. Can you talk to that a little bit and what you've seen and what you promote at USA Hockey?
Yeah, hey, great topic. I think to start off with that one, right? Once again, parents, your kids, right? So we're not going to go and tell you, exactly what to do, but I think it's important that we take a step back and listen first. We know our game is incredibly emotional, and especially right after a game, and it's understanding, those roles and responsibilities. I think any parent wants what's best for their kids, and I would say 99.9% of coaches want the same thing for those kids, right? But how do we actually drive that together and, foster that, communication, that relationship between the parent-coach relationship? And all of a sudden, when you get in that car, hey, even as a parent coach, and I know you guys are in the same shoes that I am, it's hard. How do you flip that switch, right? How do you take a deep breath and go, okay, something maybe very large happened in a game that was disappointing, but how do you actually take a step back and then understand that, hey, now's not the time to address something like that. That's not in the best interest when the kid's emotional. But a lot of times it's just listening and asking, the questions and let them talk. The kids are the best barometer of, where they're feeling and things like that. So the advice that we have through USA Hockey is really just taking a step back, not correcting the game at that time, but really enjoying, that time spent together, right? We play an incredible sport. And I think there's a lot of, when we look at it on social media, you see different sound bites of, it doesn't matter if it's a famous person or not, or if it's just a, regular hockey parent like us, that, that's some quality time you get to spend with your child, because hockey's not easy. They got to work for it and go through it. So I think it's important to have some compassion, some empathy on whatever it happens, and then reinstill those family values and those core values that you have as a club to come back. It's not a time to compare, my shifts versus, player X over here. It's actually, hey, how do I get the only person I'm really competing with is myself. How do I become a better version of myself? So then I can help the team, because as those life lessons that we get into hockey, there's a reason student athletes are the most sought after commodity when it comes to the business world, because guess what? They can handle adversity. They can handle resiliency. And most importantly, they know what it takes to be a good teammate. And if we can instill that in our kids, once again, hockey delivers that. Because it doesn't always go our way. Life's not always fair, and a hockey game doesn't always end the way it probably should at times. But if you can stick to the process and really hone in on those habits. But the biggest advice that we have for USA Hockey is just take a deep breath, check in with your child, where they're feeling at, and then, let them talk, right? Versus, you can't correct before you actually connect. And I know that's an important piece that's set up along the way, but I think it's hard to do, but it's one of those things that's critical, for those development, especially those early years, right? Where we want to develop that passion, let those kids just have fun. And it's hard because, as we know, we might take a game a little more serious. I have a lot of conversations with high school coaches, and they might want it more than the kids. And that's okay. But guess what? You got to draw that line and try to find out how, where is that player coming from versus putting your standards on that player. So that's just some small advice that we have.
I love it, Dan. A USA hockeyism. You can't correct until you connect. Love it.
I think it's funny too, because we heard that from Jason Guerrero last month. And there's so much to unpack in what you just said there. And I think a theme about it is parents have an opportunity to be a teammate of the coaches when it comes to developing their kid. And what I would say is, if you're in a car after a game, what can you actually do? Like, maybe your son or daughter, missed a goal opportunity. Well, you can't fix that sitting behind the windshield right now. At least I hope you try not to, and I think it's so incredibly important and insightful what you said, is just to ask them, hey, did you have fun? How did you feel about the game? And not even ask, I wouldn't even ask the question, what would you do differently yet? I would just leave it to those two questions. That being said,
Right.
I'm not going to be hypocritical as a coach. And sometimes you get gosh, oh, if only if, because, and I think that parents need to understand this from the coaching standpoint. 99.999% of the coaches want your child and the kids on his or her team to succeed even more than you can imagine. And, I would say that, looking at it from the lens of a parent, your job isn't to help that player get better at hockey. Your job is to help that player help him or herself get better at hockey. Create that permission to be your own advocate. And that's a skill set. That's a huge skill set.
Yeah, in a short story, Jared, like it's so important, right? And every coach, every parent, you have your own mechanisms to, diffuse that or bring that emotion down or whatever it does. If it's, walking around the rink one time before you get in the car or whatever. Personally, when I was coaching in Sweden, it was literally a probably 4-minute car ride back to our house. And it's just not fair to your significant other, because I was still wound up from the game, and I get home and I'm still thinking about the game, and I'm in another planet, and it's not fair to that person in that relationship. Right. So it took a while. I'm a slow learner, but it's like, okay, I'm not going to actually drive home. I'm going to walk home that 30 minutes versus the 5-minute car ride. In Sweden, it was actually great because they have trails everywhere. You can't do that everywhere in America, but It was a night and day difference that I got everything out of my head. So then I can actually be invested in those conversations when I get home and be present. And I think that's an important piece, just as a parent, that I'm not making it about me, not doing all that stuff as a coach. How do we actually make again that it's about the child and seeing it through their lens, and how to help them figure out those problems. We can't solve the problems for our kids, but we can help guide them. And I think that's a huge distinction.
It's interesting because, I think parents, I've never really met a parent who didn't want the best for their child. And so what parents have to realize, especially in youth sports, sometimes when you're over advocating, or you're trying to, do things that you think are going to help your child, they create this inverse. It's like ironic that you're trying to do too much, and it's actually creating a situation where either you're handicapping your kid from getting better, or you're creating a persona for yourself that we know that this happens, and parents have to realize it sometimes, especially as kids get older and teams become more competitive to get on, coaches, and I'll raise my hand, and I know Drew will say this as well, coaches look at the total package. and the parents come with the kids, at least until sometimes until they're 30, depending on the kid. But like, you have to look at this as, understanding the impact that your behavior, not just for your child, but for the team at large and for the coaches. Coaches owe their energy, their efforts to not just your child, but to the entire team. And so if you bring a situation where you're going to maybe detract from them giving 100% to other players, that's going to create a problem. It doesn't matter how many goals your player can score. It really doesn't. So,
yeah. I love that. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I love that you use the word energy. I'll just quickly mention that because I think it's so important, right? Like, hey, something might happen in a game and it's how you react to it, exactly to that point where, if you're calm and figure out a way, hey, we're going to keep doing this the right way, and it's no problem. The players take the same persona that you do as a coach, and it's the same thing for a parent. If you're calm and something happens in a game that's not going your way, hey, stay as patient, as calm as you can, and address it that way. I think that goes a long way as well. So
we got to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about tips and tactics parents can help create a well-rounded player, both from a on-ice standpoint to off-ice standpoint, and really help create self-advocates. So we'll be back with Dan Jablonic of USA Hockey and Too Many Men on the Mic on luinfo.com and AM 590 KLIS.
We're back with Dan Jablonic with USA Hockey. Dan, we've been talking about parent handbooks. We've been talking about supporting your child as a parent. What are some behaviors that parents can encourage with their players? It could be something very simple, but what tips do you have out there that parents who are listening can begin to adopt for the rest of the hockey season with their players?
Yeah, I think great question when we look at this, right? Like just talking with your kids, and we know that confidence is king in our game. And the more we can ask our players and ask your child, like, hey, what instills confidence in you? What gives you confidence? And just having those conversations with your child, you can relay those messages, to your coach. And hopefully a lot of coaches are taking it one step further, and they're actually doing a preseason and a midseason and hopefully a postseason questionnaire to ask those kind of questions, because it's more than just the technical abilities of these players. It's asking, hey, not only what instills it, but what takes it away. Some kids, they can be, they want to be corrected right away. Some kids, hey, they want to be corrected in a setting where it's multiple kids. So finding out those things and asking those questions to your child, and then relaying those information, to your coaches, that helps. That really helps as a coach. I need to know where those players are at, as far as the confidence scale, right? And then also finding out, we're only getting a snapshot, as of those kids when they come to the rink. Find out what's going on in their lives again, right? And some kids, they might be struggling in school at certain periods that, hey, I can't get extra accountability on those kids, during those time frames. But how do we actually boost those kids up to know where they're at? And I think it's, once again, meeting the kids, not only where their skill abilities at, but understanding where their social emotional side is, that we can really get the best of those kids. So I think it really starts with that. And then allowing those kids, to ask questions. The coaches are there to help, even at the youngest ages. The more we can get those, those players to talk with their coaches, and once again, I understand it's a child-adult relationship, but how do we actually foster that a little bit? Hey, if you got a question on, why wasn't I in this, situation, or playing with this certain teammate? Hey, let the kid, even at the youngest ages, 10, 12, ask the coaches versus the parent fighting every battle for those kids. And you guys know that, coaching high school hockey, it's the players that love to ask questions and take some accountability of their own that really start to thrive as they go through it. So those are just a couple little tips that I can kind of think of at the top of our head that we really try to promote. Let those players, especially when they get up to 13, that's where that transfer of responsibility really goes for those players. Like, hey, if I'm a hockey player at 13, what am I good at? What do I need to get better at? What's the plan that I'm going to actually put in place? How is my coach? How is my parent? How can they actually support that journey as they go through? I think those are the critical conversations, and always keep it in context of where that player's at. Because as we like to say at USA Hockey, you're only essentially a 12U player once. So let's make sure you're the best 12U player at that time to get the most out of that, because it goes so quick, right? Like all of a sudden you start out at 6U, 8U, and next thing you know, you got 12Us on your hand, and that's where I'm sitting right now. It's amazing how fast that journey goes with your kids.
I love it. I love it. You're 12U once, and enjoy it and savor those times. But advocacy is what I'm hearing you say a lot of. And I like how you referenced the transfer of responsibility around the age of 13. I think that's critical. And then being a supporter on that player's journey. Great stuff, Dan.
Yeah, no, I think when you look at that, right, like it's teaching the kids the younger levels. I mean, to give some more examples, I mean, hey, learning how to tie your skates. It's not easy, right? And allowing those kids to fail, I think that's a huge piece for them. And ideally, even with the younger ages, when it comes to skating, you don't want your skates double wrapped. I mean, you want these kids to get some ankle flexion, so it's a little bit looser. That's okay, right? Obviously, we don't want the foot falling out of the skate, but at the same time, allow these kids to try some things where it is hard for those kids, and build a culture as a coach around that, hey, we're trying. It's going to take a little bit more time. Parents, can we have your support that we're going to keep you from not tying their skates at least these first couple of weeks, just to let them try and see how it goes. If they need help, we can build this in. I think those little things go a long way, right? We can see it, and as you use the reference, right? Who's carrying the bag to the hockey rink? Who wants to play hockey, right? Obviously, at the younger ages, 6U and 8U, those hockey bags are bigger than the kids themselves, so they're probably going to need some help. But when you get into 10U, hey, that's where that transfer starts to go. Yeah,
no roller bags.
Yeah.
You sparked a thought with me there, Dan, because I think that we've so far focused in on what the parents can do, but the coaches can create an environment that kind of helps to maybe shepherd the parents a little bit. And I think coaches have to be very cognizant. In the USA Handbook, it actually talks about budgeting, because let's not bury our heads in the sand. It's a super expensive sport, and many of these parents are looking at it in some terms as a return on investment, which we know that is probably not a dollar. It's never going to be a dollar for dollar. But as a coach, what are some things that you can do to help create an environment that naturally allows those parents to become, teammates, and let their little, hockey players or little birds fly? What are some tips that coaches can do? Because we're not perfect either on this side of the equation.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's the thing. Our sport, it doesn't matter if you're a couple years into it or, 20 plus years, you get humbled every day because there's a better way to do it, right? And especially there's some things that majority of our coaches are parent-led coaches across the country. And I think they're bringing a lot from their daily lives to make that experience even better. So I think our first thing that we'd love to see is, doesn't matter if you're the head coach, assistant, second assistant, or the team manager, you all play a role in that experience for those players. And I think it's important that communication starts with whoever's in charge. So it's the head coach communicating to the manager and saying, hey, you know what? Off ice is not an optional thing. This is something that's built into our practice. How do we set that? We're going to actually, if we have a 6 o'clock practice, I would like everybody to be there at 5:20. We're only going to go for 20 minutes. So it's 5:20 to 5:40. And then guess what? They got 20 minutes to get ready for practice at a 10U practice. So then it becomes those habits that you're instilling, that it's part of the hockey culture, that, to become a hockey player, it's not just the on ice stuff, as you know, right? Like you have to become an athlete and develop that first. And I think that's an important piece for our parents, that if we can understand that it's a 3-pronged approach when it comes to development: human development, number one, athlete development, and then getting into the hockey specific on the third side of it. But the more that a coach can utilize the entire staff, from team manager on setting the transparency of what you're looking for. Hey, these are, we're going to have a theme. We're going to work on play away from the puck for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And now you're going to convey that to the parents through a team email, to, whatever app that's out there with your scheduling, right? So you're going to build that up. I think that working together as a staff really helps out, that it's not just coming through one voice. So, that it can get through to the kids that way. So I think those are some things that are really important for us. That how do you have those tips to really set that culture of really what you want to prioritize? And I think if, when we learn, and you guys know, there's some incredible people in hockey, and we've learned along the way that it's not a copy and paste, but if you can actually take a little bit of, this organization or this coach, then all of a sudden my experience becomes that much better. And I think it comes down to a good friend of ours through USA Hockey, Donnie Granato, talks about, hey, what you permit, you promote. It's that simple. So if you can keep that in line and making sure that you're creating that culture every day at the rink, and, we know development happens every day, not just every once in a while, or, we're doing hockey skills on Thursday. Well, what about all the skills on the other practice days, right? Like, it's so important for us, like how we build that in. So that's where I'd start.
Well, I think we've got time for one more topic before we want to jump into the drill and talk a little bit about that. And I think your segue on communicating practice themes is really, really spot on. I like the idea as a coach of, you kind of answer as many of those questions before they're asked, and create it so that the parents can be, ultimately, we want parents to be the biggest fans out there. And I would ask you, like, what your thoughts are on, let's talk about the environment of the rink, because this is where a lot of the behaviors sometimes happen. I, as a coach, I get annoyed when I see parents kind of lining the glass, and I'm not always the biggest fan of a parent being in the penalty box. But just the actual environment of the rink, some things that that USA Hockey promotes. I've always seen these posters of, you wouldn't go to your kid's math test and bang on the glass outside the classroom. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we can transition right into some fun stuff and looking at a drill for other coaches out there.
Yeah, and you hit it, right? Like, it's like in the corporate world, right? Like, there's standards, right? And there's a culture, and there's a climate that, you got to follow the law. And it's no different when you're inside a hockey rink. I think that's important. We talked about our game. The temperature rises and lowers at different paces as we go through. And I think it's important for us to really recognize that. And it's like anything else, it's setting those expectations. And then also, how do you support it as you go through? And it's all relationship based that way. So I think it's important that, once again, we're role models in whatever we do as a coach, as a parent, and we set that standard. And the kids they understand energy systems, right? So if you got a parent that's super nervous or up in the stands and they got a stopwatch out, and unfortunately it's, we've seen some incredible stuff, but it's almost like to reference Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I mean, it's a little bit of everything, right? And so how do we focus on that 95% that's incredibly good and get rid of that other 5% that can be really ugly at times? We've seen, from coaches or parents attacking officials and over the course of the years. And I think it's an important piece for us to, how do we step back, act like an adult, in a stressful situation, right? And really be that model for those players. It doesn't mean you're any less competitive or, don't want to win. It just means that, hey, you're setting a standard to set these kids up, for success long-term, not only in hockey, but in life. And I think that's important. Our motto with USA Hockey, we're not just trying to raise, incredibly skilled kids. I mean, if we're taking a team overseas, they got to be good humans first, right? They don't have time to, worry about some kid's character. If they don't have that, well, guess what? There's so many hockey players out right there. They're going to find somebody else. So I think that's important in that message to those parents. Like, we want to make sure, and we're so fortunate. I mean, our game is, better than a lot of the other sports by a long shot when it comes to the people that you meet in our sport. It's absolutely incredible in what they'll do for you. So I think it's just getting back to those kind of things and removing yourself from this situation a little bit, and looking at, hey, these are some things that we can actually do, and have organizations that have an active hockey director, and hockey directors can't be there for every game, but guess what? Set up some, policies in place that you have some people looking out and saying, hey, this is what we all know, like if you go to another rink, you feel the temperature of that other team of, what they're cheering for or not cheering for. It's a big difference, and you want to be respected in your community and around the other areas. So the more that you can work together to develop that and instill in your kids, they're going to be set up for success long term.
Dan, we've had mental health as a topic on the Too Many Men on the Mic show. We've had some great mental health coaches and experts as that's becoming a topic around youth hockey and even at the higher levels of the game. So I'm curious if you can share with our listeners just a little bit about any kind of special needs that a youth hockey player might have, and identifying really the best ways to communicate with them.
Yeah, great question. I think, and I love that you talked about it. This isn't just for the high performance, right? The one percenters. This is every hockey player. It's just that where our society's at right now. I think it brought it to light during COVID when they took hockey away from us, and now to see where we're at, where, man, there's a lot going on in these kids' lives, and we're only getting a snapshot. So the more that we can actually, really find out what's going on with them besides the hockey is a huge thing. And I know you've talked about the mental health, but it's really the relationship and the ability. And we offer hockey director courses through USA Hockey and leadership courses. We actually bring in experts on performance and relationship, and besides just culture, it's actually how do you have a relationship to build upon that, where it's if you're having a snapshot of a kid during the day, how do you actually check in with that player, right? All of a sudden they show up to the rink and you ask them, hey, is 1 to 5, 5 being your best day, 1 being your worst, something as simple as that. If you got a kid sitting at a 1 or a 2, you got to find out what's going on. Maybe the best thing isn't to have that player on the ice, right? Each player is different. Some kids, maybe it is okay, but have those conversations. And that's why I can't stress enough. One person can't do all this, right? You're going to feel that from your other coaches, your managers, people around that. Really, it's, we talk about it all takes a village to raise this. And, every player that makes it is and that doesn't mean that you're an NHLer. It means that you're somebody in the community that's giving back and loves the sport and might be a successful business owner. All had help along the way, and that's really, really important for us. How do we actually and kids change so much. Just because the kid might be a little troublemaker at 12U, how do we get through to that kid that all of a sudden they turn into a responsible great teammate when they get up into high school? That's an important piece, and not label a kid too early. It's so easy to do in our climate. We almost have a more of a competition model versus a true development model. So how do we help these kids? Because they're kids. They're not fully grown adults until they get to be, 24, 25 on the male side and 22, 23 on the female side. So really keeping that in perspective. How do we teach? How do we actually nurture those kids as they go through?
My wife would argue 49 is when you kind of fully develop.
or never, right?
Or never. Well, the thing, and hats off to Dan. This is why he's a pro. We do things in threes, and we heard you've got to connect before you can correct. We heard, I think what was the other ism that was in there? I missed. I wrote it. I was taking a hash mark, and then I was about to say it takes a village to make the number 3, and he took my thunder. So, but it absolutely takes a village. And I like how you finished with, we don't want to write we don't want to. The book's not over at 12, and parents have to realize, I think too, and coaches, like, we all come to hockey, to the rink, to our lives, to our jobs with certain, our past experiences drive what decisions we make. give a kid, give a parent, give a coach a chance. Every season's a new season. It's a new chance to write a new chapter. There you go. A new chance to write a new chapter. So that's a
There
little
you go.
overtime. There we go. Well, let's have a little fun here. We're starting a new segment where we're inviting coaches and hockey folks into the Too Many Men on the Mic website by building out a repository of cool drills and great drills. And so, Dan, I think you sent us over a drill. I did my best to kind of mimic it, and I'm gonna let you walk us through it here. And then what we'll do is, all credit to Dan Jablonic, we're gonna take this whiteboard and instructions, we're gonna PDF it, put it on our website for other coaches to come in and take a look at. So we've got one from Pooch and Jason from the last show on there.
Awesome.
Drew and I have a few. But let's see if I can get this to work here, because I know that Grant will.
And as you're setting that up, the last thing I'd like to add, Jared, is just that we know how hard this is for the parents, and there's lots of resources out there from your local association to USA Hockey. Remember, your journey is your journey, right? It's hard to, compare to the next person, but we're really excited. I'm actually part of a committee now that we're going to be working on. We got a great handbook for the beginning parent, but how do we actually, that landscape as it changes, right? And that shift that I mentioned from 10 to 12, and then all of a sudden 13, it's a little bit different as we go through. So it's some exciting things that'll be coming forward in the next, couple months through USA Hockey as we work through this as that landscape changes. How can we better prepare our parents and players and coaches for that landscape? And like I said, just giving some things to, bring some awareness to certain things, as you guys mentioned, because it's critical, and just keep asking questions. Because like I said, we get humbled every day. There's a better way to do this in our great game of hockey, and focus on the good stuff, because, I think we all have a personal story as how great our sport is and what it delivers beyond hockey.
Love it.
Well, let's talk about Lilia 2v1 here. So I took your drill. We're using Drift Hockey here, by the way, which is a new app that Drew and I are starting to build a relationship with Brian Dolan, who's the founder of this. It's actually a pretty cool. We're helping him kind of develop it with great feedback. But talk about this. We can play the video, but walk us through this for coaches and what this does for our players and their development.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm really excited that we actually get to do this and talk some more hockey here as we go through it. But I think when we look at it, in this drill in particular, this is from my time in Sweden, and I absolutely loved it. This was actually the video I sent you was a couple 11-year-olds, but I think it's important to understand that it doesn't matter if this is a 9-year-old starting out or a high-end pro player going through, because it's fundamental to our game. So this one here, it first starts out, it's called Luleå. Luleå is essentially in northern Sweden, but they're a competitor, but they do some good stuff over there. But it's just taken going from essentially when we're teaching kids how to possess the puck and pass, we might see it in the old style of coaching of, hey, put the person in the middle, and those players are stationary. So those kids try to pass through that middle player, that defender. Well, in today's game, it's so fast, right? We want kids to think and make decisions. So we actually, put in a constraint as far as the area. And for the higher end players, you can go right in the circle, but go in a little bit bigger area. That's why I put those cones in the diagram, just to show for these younger players. If you have players that say 10 and 12, you want to go. It's a 2-on-1. The player in the middle is trying to get the puck, but those two players have to read where they are in relation to that defensive player. So you don't always have to pass it, right? It's working on puck protection. It's working a little bit of awareness. Where do I need to go? Am I not just forcing this play? I love this one just because that's their game, especially when you're getting introduced from squirts or from 10U to 12U, is, that individual game where one player can take it up and down the ice to more of the team concept. So how do we teach those players not to be in the same plane or same line, but actually create different depths? I got to work back towards the puck. I got to get above it. I got to get below it. And then you see which kids are actually have their heads up. They can move the puck. So that's essentially what that drill is in that zone right there. And you just build in a point system with the kids. Hey, how many consecutive passes can you make and the highest point total wins, right? So it's fun. Kids get naturally competitive and see and go that, and you can build in for the defensive player that they actually, once they win the puck, they can switch with the other players, or you can actually say, okay, we're going to really focus on stick detail and stick on puck. That how many points can you get defensively? It's 1 point for every time you create a turnover for those players if they make a bad pass and things like that. So it's incredibly fun for the kids. It's competitive, like you can see in the video. It's all different skill levels that can go in with this, and you see which kids can actually think the game versus just the fast kid going around moving the puck and then one little poke check and the kid loses the puck. How do you actually work the body position to go through? And what I built in with this drill is actually we like to do a 3-zone warm-up, because typically at the 12U age group, you don't get kids always super motivated to get on the ice, but when you're playing games, they're going to be there, right? So this one here is kind of fun. You start with the Lulio 2-on-1, and then you say you have all the black players on that one side, you take the players in the white jerseys on the other, and then have that shift go for 30 seconds. And then as the whistle blows, then they go out to the neutral zone. Those 3 players move up into the middle, and then they just work on puck control, overspeed, working on different types of moves, just getting to feel the puck. And the same thing with the white players do the same thing. And then on the next 30-second whistle, or even shorter if you want to go, they go into the far zone and they play a 3-on-3 game situations, kind of putting that all into play, where it's like, hey, you just worked on puck possession, you worked on awareness, scanning the ice. Now put it into play for 30 seconds in a 3-on-3 game. The whistle blows, those players in the end zone go all the way back down where they started. It just keeps continuous. So it's a 3-zone warm-up. When you got 2 teams on the ice, it works absolutely perfect. And like I said, we've done this from college teams to high school teams down to as young as 10U hockey. Really looking in, and I would highly recommend, if there's 1 or 2 key points that you really want to hit in with your players, doing that. But that's a great way to essentially get 15 minutes of your practice as a warm-up where kids are energized and getting things going. So that's our Lulio 2-on-1 with the kind of 3-zone warm-up. So
we're running this tomorrow, Drew. We're running it tomorrow.
I love how it's progressive and each one builds on the other to ultimately put you in a situation to put the 2 together when you're in the far end zone. I love those kinds of drills, Dan.
Yeah, well, and it's fun for the kids, right? Because they want to play, and I love that they're constantly moving like the game, and and especially passing is so hard at the younger levels. So how do we get these kids? And a lot of times, focusing in to understand, like, hey, if I'm a lefty and I'm passing to a lefty, there's a big difference where that person wants the puck, right? Are they showing the blade on that side? Or if they're a righty, to get it set up, and then that position of moving your hips, moving your feet, those kind of things, you can look at the details within those players. And, for the higher end players, then you can say, okay, what are some other things? There's some constraints that we can put. We got to work on. We're not good at our backhands. Well, guess what? This time through, only going to your backhand, right?
Like I was just going to say that you can only use your backhand. I won't name the player, but last week had a player that likes to pull the puck all the way across his body. And I said, this is why we practice the backhand. This is the time to do it. So I love that you brought that up. You only can use the backhand this time. Great point, Dan.
Yeah.
No, let's see it in action here real quick. I think this is you guys see the screen okay?
There we go.
Yeah.
So this is it's actually my daughter out there right now, but it's she's a little righty there on the top of the screen, but going down to work the puck. And but yeah, it's just fun for these kids. See, this kid is actually smart, waiting for them. And then once they come, then you start to move the puck and work for the puck. And the reason we show this, these kids are 11, and the skills can get even better as you go up. And as they get better, then you can modify that space a little bit, put some more, especially for you guys, you get a skilled high school team, you put them inside that circle, you go outside the circle, and guess what? It's a changed possession. It's the other, it's the defensive player's puck. I think that's important when we're looking at it from a coaching perspective. The more that we can actually hold those players accountable to whatever those constraints or rules are in the game, and then making them play defense when they don't do it. right? Like that's a big
Yeah.
piece, that change of possession. And I think that's where our game needs to be, especially at the younger levels, right? Where it's not just, hey, it's not just a 2-on-1. Like this, there's so much that goes into it. How do you play off the puck? Because a lot of times we're yelling at the kid that, made the bad pass. Well, when his teammate's standing right next to the defensive player,
Right.
it's not his fault, right? Like,
Right.
how do you do it?
Yep. Well, Dan, we cannot thank you enough for joining us again. We're going to put this up on our website. We'll give you the byline, all credit. But we're using this tomorrow. I think right off the bat, I love the transition from zone to zone, keeping those kids moving, and what a great drill that can be adaptable at all different ages. And I can't thank you enough for joining us. Awesome topic that we could have probably spent another 45 minutes on. But thanks so much for joining us here today. Obviously, if we don't talk to you before the Olympics, go Team USA. And I'll be sure to reach out. I'll let Chris Durso know you said hi.
Yeah, definitely do that. All the
Thanks,
good
Dan.
people down in Missouri. They're good stuff there. I love it. So hopefully see you guys soon.
Thanks.
Great
Thanks, Dan.
Thanksgiving, Dan.
Yep. Same to you guys.
Take care.
Thank you.